obviously with SEO, Google it's a changing beast all the time. So that, a lot of people are wondering, like, do these tactics and strategies that worked, 5-6 years ago, do they still work? What's relevant now? What are people looking for, and how can we, obviously get our content in front of these eyes?
So joining me on the call today, I've got Nathan Hughes from Diggity Marketing. Welcome to the call, Nathan.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Pleasure to have you. But maybe give us a bit of a snapshot. Diggity Marketing, what are you known for? What are you good at? What do you do?
Yeah, perfect. So Diggity Marketing on the surface is the personal blog of the founder, Matt Diggity. But it's a lot more than that. So obviously the blog, we share a lot of SEO insights through testing that we do through our other companies.
Yeah.
So Diggity Marketing is actually an umbrella company for about 4 to 5 different companies.
Yep.
So a couple of the other companies that we have is the Search Initiative, which is our own SEO agency. We also have LeadSpring, which is our affiliate SEO agency, where essentially we buy and sell websites. So we flip websites, just like people do with buying and selling, flipping houses. We do that with websites, which is interesting. We also have a link building agency called Authority Builders. We've got courses, so the Affiliate Lab, and we have a variety of other companies that we're stakeholders in as well. And my role is essentially take care of the marketing for most of those companies.
Fantastic. So, and how long have you guys been around for?
So Diggity Marketing has been around for about, I believe, 6 to 7 years. LeadSpring, I think, has been around a lot longer before that, and then obviously a lot of the other businesses are 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, fair enough. So tell me a bit about your view of the market right now. It's been an interesting couple of years for a lot of businesses. What's your perspective?
My perspective on the market, as in the online digital market, or like?
Well, I suppose like your target market is who? Who's your target?
Yeah, so my target market is essentially people who are either they have an online business or that part of their business is online. So we help them obviously, understand SEO and tactics to get their services out in front of people. We're also, our market's also entrepreneurs, people that are looking to break away from the 9 to 5 and create their own online businesses that allow them, to make some good money and have a lot of fun along the way.
And thinking about those markets, what do you feel the pinch is right now? What are they sort of stressed about, struggling with?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, with SEO, Google it's a changing beast all the time. So a lot of people are wondering, like, do these tactics and strategies that worked, 5-6 years ago, do they still work? What's relevant now? What are people looking for, and how can we, obviously get our content in front of these eyes? So the way we do that is we do testing all the time. That's, there's a lot of people out there that are kind of putting out a lot of stuff that they haven't necessarily tested and sometimes doesn't actually work. And we actually go out and test a lot of these theories. And then we publish, this is what worked. And then we apply that to our own businesses, which obviously helps us, succeed as well in terms of getting it up in the search results.
Yeah. So really, like the sort of element there is the testing. And I suppose one of the things for me when people say, what should I do? Like, where should I invest my marketing dollar? And it's like, if you see a fork in the road, you should take it, right? Because the short answer is testing. Try some stuff out. If it doesn't work, change it. And if it does work, do more of it. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the key to that as well is to be really specific in what you're testing. A mistake I see a lot of people make is they will test, let's just say you've got a landing page for a product and you might change 4 or 5 things and say, okay, I've got this one page and I've got this other page where I've changed the 4 or 5 things. But if this one page that you've changed the stuff works, you actually don't know why it's working because you've got 4 or 5 things. So when you do make tests, test one thing at a time. And you'll know, like, this one thing has increased, click-through rate by 5, 10, 15.
Yeah, right.
Or it hasn't. Whereas a lot of people will test a variety of things at one time, and it just skews the data, and you just don't know actually what works. So that's my tip for people who are looking to get into testing. Keep it simple, test one thing at a time, and go from there.
Yeah, fantastic. So if we were looking at the last 2 years, which have been an interesting time for a lot of people in business, what do you think the most valuable lessons have been from your perspective?
Online's where it's at. We've been one of the few fortunate industries that's absolutely exploded as people have come online. Obviously, getting in front of these eyeballs is getting more and more important. So businesses have started to make the move online. Obviously, SEO can seem like black magic to people. So in terms of our agency, they've been getting a lot of extra clients on board in terms of people wanting to learn it themselves, learn about all this stuff themselves. Obviously, our blog has seen a nice little spike as well. So in terms of the market itself for us, it's grown a lot over these last 2 years as people have come online.
Do you think that's going to stay, or do you think that's going to sort of go backwards a bit now that the world is starting to move out of lockdown?
I think the industry was already moving in that direction. People are going online. It's convenient. It's right there. You got a phone, your computer, your laptop. So essentially, the market was already heading that way. It's just COVID just fast forwarded it. So I think this particular situation has kind of forced businesses to think outside of the square. And I don't think if it's working for them, I don't think they're going to go back on it. I think they'll start obviously opening up offline, so to speak. But I think the benefits of online are there, and they've now tried it, and they've hopefully seen the results of that. So I think the market itself is going to kind of stay. Whether it kind of sees that big jump that we've seen, who knows? But I still think we'll be slowly going up over time.
Yeah, right. So if you were working with a client who's sort of asking you what the future holds, what do you see the next 2 years looking like?
The next 2 years, I can see that online is going to continue to grow. People are getting more familiar with it, whether they were already part of the ecosystem or whether they were forced onto it through obviously what's been happening. And as online shops become more smarter in the way they do things, and obviously the systems that allow them to do that get more intuitive and easier to use. I can just see that in terms of for us and providing SEO services, that's going to increase because more people will see how easy it is to get in. But then obviously the user experience for the customers, they're going to find it a lot more enjoyable as people are refining the sales process and the interactivity between businesses and customers.
I think there is an expectation that the online experience is as good or better than the face-to-face experience.
Yeah.
Well, it puts a challenge in front of people because it's like, if you think about how taxis used to be, 10 years ago, they were very unreliable, they were dirty, and they were arrogant. And now they can't afford to be because they've got Uber chewing on their heels. So I think the same thing will happen, right? Where people have gone online as a pivot, they better get their delivery mechanism sorted because the expectation is going to be if you're online, you deliver instant response.
Yeah,
fantastic. Let me ask you, do you have any favorite authors, bloggers, or books?
There's a variety. So, the initial person that comes to mind is a guy called Tim Ferriss. If people aren't aware of him, he wrote a book ages ago called The 4-Hour Workweek. It kind of sounds a bit gimmicky, but in terms of the ideas behind it are really interesting and unique. And that's what originally got me into business and entrepreneurship. But his podcast is excellent. I'll listen to it every week just because it's all about high performers and what it takes to perform. So highly recommend that just as a general overview. In terms of, SEO and such like that, depending on where you're at, there's a lot of different resources. So Diggity Marketing is more towards people who are at least know what SEO is. But if you have no idea what SEO stands for, you kind of know Google exists, but how do I work it? There's some simpler resources like moz.com is really good. And Brian Dean, who runs Backlinko, has some really good stuff. Then obviously, our website, I kind of recommend it. I think we've got some good stuff there that really helps people. So it's dignitymarketing.com. But there's other people in the affiliate space as well that we recommend. So there's authority hackers. So Mark and Gail there, we know them, but we really like what they do as well. And there's a bunch of others. Like I can go on and on and on.
Yeah. So just going back to Tim Ferriss, you mentioned the 4-hour work week, which is a classic. Is there one sort of message that Tim Ferriss has communicated that has really resonated or stuck with you?
I think for me, it's about definitely scaling and delegation. That was the biggest thing for me. And also the idea that for me personally was like the 9 to 5 is just one option, like working for someone else is one option. However, there are all these other options and they're completely customizable if you're smart about it, and you make the right decisions and you have an end goal in mind that you can work towards. Delegation was probably the biggest thing for me, as I was a manager at the time. And then being able to approach that to life as well, which is kind of interesting as well.
There's another good book that I don't know if you've read. It's called Who Not How. You haven't read it? You need to get it. It was written by a guy by the name of Dan Sullivan, who runs Strategic Coach in the States.
Okay.
And it's an interesting read because it talks about the same sort of thread. And he says, most people are trying to work out how to do stuff. And the problem with working out how to do stuff is you're destined to keep doing it. Where when you work out who can do the stuff, you can then delegate it and move on. So it's all about being able to scale and leverage. So talking around the same sort of theme as Tim Ferriss. Where, the smarter people, because 9 to 5 is an industrial age thing, right? It's how factory workers used to work. And reality is we don't have factories much anymore. So that's just a sort of tradition that's sort of stuck by us. And reality is people should be paid on value creation, not on hours anymore. But it's an interesting perspective.
I think just to go down the rabbit hole as well, if your listeners are interested, like in delegation, if it's kind of a newer concept to you, or you're kind of not sure how do I go about doing it, a book I highly recommend is The E-Myth. I can't remember the author, but The E-Myth is excellent. And then if you're at the stage where you're like, okay, I'm looking to hire someone, what do I do? The best one is that I've read is called Who, the A-Player Method for Hiring, by a guy called Jeff Smart. And it's an excellent book. My hiring process is based heavily on that. It gives you a very step-by-step guide and the right, the questions to ask and why they're the right questions to ask and what to listen for. And 9 out of 10 times, the people I've hired through that process have been excellent and I've seen my business grow exponentially as a result.
Brilliant. Michael Gerber wrote The E-Myth, just for everyone's reference who's looking for that. And it's been updated to The E-Myth Revisited. And there's an interesting story behind that, because when he first wrote it, which was nearly 30 years ago, he was a big pot smoker. Not many people know this about Michael Gerber, and his first version of the book, the sequence wasn't right. So if you ever get an original copy of The E-Myth and you compare it to The E-Myth Revisited, it's the same story, but just in the right order. But you had to get an editor in to fix it. But a very profound book, probably one of the foundations of everything we teach as well. So a couple of good recommendations there. So if you're going to sum it up, if you were going to give some advice to someone in business right now about what the next year would look like in business, where would you suggest they focus their energy and time?
It's a very broad question, because my initial answer is it depends, right? So I guess in terms of, I'll just speak around my own experience and where I can see is, from people I've spoken to, is a good way to approach it. And I think a lot of people, particularly with a lot of the issues going on, the people I've seen the people who I've seen succeed compared to those who've kind of stagnated, there's a particular mindset I've noticed, and that's whether they're focused on the actual problem, like, oh my God, COVID's going on, and or they're focused on solutions. And it comes, and it's not just like the big picture stuff, it's even the day-to-day stuff. So like, for example, when you're looking from, okay, this is what's going wrong, compared to, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? And, at least having one action. It's like, by being a solutions focused, and you start to look at, okay, where do you fall short? And then what actions you can do to overcome that, rather than being stuck. And so I think when you're in that, I'd rather like be solutions focused, go for a potential solution. And even if I get it wrong, I actually have the opportunity to learn from that, pivot, and still moving forward. And even though I've stuffed up, I'm still far ahead, as if I kind of was frozen.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. I think, for a lot of people, they forget they learn to walk by falling over. And the best way to succeed is to make mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah. But then the next level with that, and this is something that I was taught quite early on in my management career, and I now apply this to how I manage, is, the next level is actually training your staff to be solutions focused. So for example, if they come to me with an issue, I always request that they also come to me with a potential solution. And the reason I do that is, if someone comes to me with a problem, is that they're essentially delegating upwards to me, which isn't ideal, right? You should delegate down the chain. And so obviously by saying, hey, come to me with a solution, there's less thinking from my end, but it also means they're taking ownership of the situation. And I can go into the benefits of all that, but it definitely trains them to take ownership. And to be honest, the solutions that they come up with are going to be 10 times better than anything I could come up with. And the reason for that is they're actually in there dealing with the problem. They know it more intimately than I would. And so any solution that I recommend is probably not going to be spot on, because there's all these nuances that I don't understand, because I'm not dealing with it every day. So 90% of the time, the solutions that my staff bring to me are usually really, really good. And if there's any tweaking, the reason for that is, I just have a larger overview of the business. I can say, okay, well, we're just going to consider this over here, but if we tweak it, that could really work and really work well. Does that work for you? And they're like, yeah, cool, that's good. So that's my take on, like, where do I see, people being in a year? Those that are solutions focused and also train their staff to be solutions focused are going to be a lot more ahead than people who don't do that.
Yeah, awesome. Some great tips in there, Nathan. So we really appreciate your time today. So look, going to wrap it all up there. Once again, thanks very much for your time. It's been awesome getting some insights. This will go up on our community, so they'll get to see a bit of Nathan and understand a bit more about Diggity, and there might be some connections to get made out of it. But once again, I just want to say thanks for your time. So appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Yep, pleasure.